Good morning, it's Michelle over at Hesketh Emporium and Hesketh Handmade, where we do all sorts of tutorials and fun stuff with crafting. Today we're going to do something a little bit different from all the machine work we've done recently, and we're going to do something by hand. Well, it can be partially by hand. So what I'm going to be doing is using up all of my Liberty Tana Lawn scraps, which I have been saving, and we are going to make hexagons. So I've got myself all set up here, ready to go, and let's get started. I'll show you how we do it. So what you're going to need to do little hexagons out of cotton, you need 100% cotton or polycottons if you want. I don't use polycottons because I don't believe they will last as well. And if you're going to go and do all of this hand stitching and all of this work, I suggest you use good quality fabrics. And the tiny little pieces that you keep and cut off from other projects are ideal. So here we have, I've got a little iron in front of me and a pressing mat, and I can work on my pressing mat. I have got scissors to cut my fabrics. I've got all little scraps of fabrics. Here's my pile of bits and pieces that I keep. You need either clips to hold or pins to hold your fabric to your hexagons. You need a glue stick if you don't use clips. Pritt glue stick will work just as well. This happens to be a fabric one that you can buy from Clover. You need hexagons. These are on cardboard. You know, in the old days they used to use newspaper, whatever they had lying around. But I've cut these on my, what is it, a Cricut? No, it's one of those type of machines. And these are 1 inch on each side. So that's the size. When it says 1 inch, they mean one side of the hexagon is 1 inch long. And if it's a 2 inch, that side, each side is 2 inches long. So you can make it any size you want. Bigger, obviously, will go quicker. But that's the basis for your work. They're all little hexagons. And then you need a needle and thread. I always use Gutermann, as you know, and this is Gutermann polyester. Get something that will blend reasonably well with all of the colors, because I've got such a big variety of color. I'm sticking with one color for all my stitching. So to start off with, cut yourself squares or hexagons, but squares are quite easy, because they work really well and there's less wastage that way. So I've cut myself a little stack of squares, which are slightly bigger. They want to wrap nicely with at least a 1/2 centimeter or so overlap for you to stitch. And once you've got a little pile and you've got these cut out, cut them by hand if you have to, but please be very accurate when you do that. You can download these little templates on a full sheet online and then cut them out of paper or cardboard. The cardboard's quite good because you can reuse it all the time. You can see some pinholes in there. You can pin them to your work, but if you don't want to pin them to your work, then glue is a really great way of doing it, or these little clips. Right, so there we go. This is what we are going to land up with. Lots and lots of little hexagons, which are then joined together in whatever design you like. Could be totally random and it looks just as beautiful. Once you've got your shapes, they then interlock with each other to create a nice big quilt. So this one, what I've done is I've taken my central flower and I've surrounded it by what I'm going to use probably throughout the quilt as the borders, I suppose you'd call them. And then they can all join together eventually to create a very nice pattern. So there you go. That's what we've got there. Let's begin. We are going to use our glue stick, put a little bit of glue onto your fabric, paste that onto the wrong side of your work. And I do this all together, a whole bunch of them. So I glue lots of hexagons to my fabric so that I've got a little pile. It's always more effective, not effective, it's always more beneficial when you're doing a production line of stuff to do one step repeated for a while and then go to the next step in the process. After all, that's how Henry Ford managed to make cars so cheaply. When he brought out the Ford, the only color you could get it in was black. So that's the way we do it if we're using the glue stick. Brilliant, because it's so much quicker. If you're not going to use the glue stick, what you can use is pins. Then all you're going to do is pin it to the center through there so that it holds it while you're doing. What happens is if you don't actually hold it down somehow, you start on one side, and by the time you've got here, you haven't realized, but your hexagon has moved and you've run out of space for your seam to be turned over. So that's the reason we do that. Okay, so I've got my little pile of things there. If you were using a clip, you would start by putting your hexagon in the middle of your little fabric piece. You could flip that over to cover one side. It must be tight up against the edge of your cardboard, and you can hold it like that. Then what you do is you come to the next side of your hexagon and you pull that nice and taut. Don't over tighten it, because otherwise you're stretching the fabric. And then what you can do is, with a knot in the bottom of your thread, let me just grab my thread here. Sorry, it seems to have got itself messed up. I fold that over, hold that with my thumb, and then I put a little stitch, 1/2 centimeter or so, from there, and I double stitch that one. This is one of the reasons I don't use clips and pins, because the thread keeps getting hooked over it. Once you've got that first one done, hold that edge nice and taut, the fabric over that edge, and then flip over the next one, making sure your corner is pulled nice and tight. I then put a little stitch into that edge there, so your thread just trails across the surface. I then move down, pull it down with my thumb and my nail, fold the next edge over, and put your stitch in there. And basically you are repeating that around all 6 sides of your hexagon to secure it into place. So I'm going to just show you on this one, but you would then repeat this just on a dozen or so at a time, or whatever you like. The lovely thing about this is you can sit and do this while you're watching TV or reading a book, an audio book. So then on the last one, what I do is I tuck under this corner so that it sits and creates a nice crease there. And I pull that down, make sure both sides of that final corner are nice and taut to your cardboard. And you do your stitches there. And then I just do a little knot to finish it off through the loop. Pull that tight and then trim it off. Now the reason you want to keep these quite tight to the cardboard is because if you don't, actually that little millimeter or so difference, when you come to join up a few hexagons, you'll find that one edge is actually longer than the other, and you're wanting to join them together like that. And that is why they need to be absolutely perfectly made each time. Each hexagon must be the same size. And then I would stitch along that side to join 2 together. Then I would put another hexagon here. Let's get a different color so it's a little easier to see. Then you put a hexagon in there and you sew down those 2 edges there. And that's how you build it up. And you do whip stitch to join them on this side. So you simply put them together like that. and you whip stitch across. So now we've got our one hexagon. You make a little pile of those, as I said, and then you take your iron, and I prefer to iron them with a steam iron. I will steam them so that the edges are really nicely creased. And when I take it off, the paper off, or the cardboard, I'm not going to lose its shape. Now, if you use glue, what I do is I put the scissors into that little hole in my template, and I just scooch it round like that so that it releases the glue from the fabric. And by the way, that glue will just wash out in there. And I keep the scissors in there. I hold the cardboard between my thumb and the scissors, and then I just pull until the cardboard comes out. Reflatten your cardboard so it's ready for next use. Push out your thing and give it another press if you want to. You don't have to do this now. You can always repress them before you start to sew them. But that is a hexagon paper pieced. And you can see your stitches are still visible on the outside. But once you actually join everything together, none of that will be seen. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to hand stitch all of mine into flowers like this. And you can see how that's been done. Each one has been whip stitched to the next one. So I will do all of them at the same time and try and start in a place and then continue until my thread runs out. Just to be as efficient as possible. So that, when it is done, is ready to be joined on to the main other pieces. What I will then do is, I'm thinking about, because of this huge size that mine has to be, I'm thinking that I might back this onto a very fine cotton, glue them down, and then possibly zigzag them together in their entirety to make the big 3x3 meter quilt that I need for my bed. So you can imagine that is a lot of hand stitching, which I don't really relish the thought of. That might be how I progress, because it is a lot of work, and I do need thousands of these little squares, hexagons, to make that. So that is how to paper piece a hexagon for quilting. And these make a lovely little design. So if you want to do a child's quilt, you could perhaps take all sorts of different colors, and you could put it together into a nice shape that could be a worm, for example, or a rainbow of colors, something along those lines. And you can then put that onto a nice backing fabric. So there's a lot you can do with the hexagon, and they are very, very effective and a wonderful way to use up all of your scraps. So that is how to do paper pieced hexagons, and I hope you enjoy that, and try it, even if you only do a few, and put them onto a plain piece of fabric and applique a design and applique them down. And don't do an entire quilt the way I'm doing. So use up all your scraps. This is a lovely project to do when you're sitting and you don't have your machine in front of you. So have a wonderful time. Enjoy. Thank you for joining me. This is Michelle over at Hesketh Emporium. Bye-bye.